from two of the bloodiest large-scale conflicts of the 21st century currently. When the pain and loss are only for those involved, those who share the same fate, or just words uttered superficially. Inside the convoluted brains of the elite from unrelated superpowers directly unrelated to the ongoing war, a series of money-making methods has been proposed only to seize the opportunity to profit for a century regardless of the consequences it may leave for future generations, a world full of hostility and instability. So which countries are succeeding in turning the risks of other nations into opportunities for themselves? And how they have done it will all be revealed in today's video. But before delving into the main content, 5 Seconds Unfiltered invites you to shape your understanding of the significant benefits for any superpower reflected in this video, including economic benefits and rights related to political and scientific and technical security. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the 5 Seconds Unfiltered channel so that we have more motivation to produce even better quality videos in the future. Thank you very much. And now, let's return to the main content. First, let's consider the direct beneficiaries of the Ukraine conflict and the hostilities between Israel and Iran-backed forces, as well as their products. In which one cannot ignore the giants in the arms export industry, who everyone knows who they are. They have in their hands the production lines of weapons that have proven effective for many decades on various battlefields in the Middle East, Afghanistan, and Africa. The Western sanctions on all fronts and the state of Russia's defense industry have forced the diversification of capabilities to provide additional support to frontline forces, boosting the traditional arms importers of this country when it comes to finding alternative shopping destinations. And the first replacement that anyone can think of is none other than the weapon tycoons from the United States. Indeed, the impact of the conflict in Ukraine has helped increase arms sales revenue through the U.S. government by 49.1%. From $34.8 billion in 2021 to $51.9 billion. Notable deals include a $13.9 billion contract for the transfer of F-15 fighter jets to Indonesia, a $6.9 billion contract for the transfer of warships to Greece, and a $6 billion deal for the sale of M1A2 Abrams tanks to Poland, where General Dynamics is responsible for producing Abrams tanks. Boeing handles the F-15 orders. Lockheed Martin is responsible for shipbuilding. Yes, the F-15 Eagle, a name that is too familiar to anyone regularly following military news. Up to the present moment, it is still considered the top choice for countries wanting weapons with non-stealth air-to-air capabilities against Russian variants like Su-27, Su-30. So it's not hard to understand that in the context of the conflict in Ukraine, F-15 versions suddenly become sought after by countries as an alternative to Russian competitors. Notable agreements in this period include Indonesia signing a memorandum of understanding to buy 24 F-15X fighters on August 21, 2023. Remember that F-15X, although still labeled F-15, has been comprehensively upgraded with the most advanced U.S. avionics and radar systems, allowing it to detect target attacks with remarkable accuracy. This is especially suitable for Indonesia, as its Navy's surface fleet appears to be overwhelmed by the threat from countries like China. It is known that before signing the memorandum with Indonesia, in March 2023, the U.S. Central Command announced that it would sell F-15s to Egypt. In addition to fighter jets, modern U.S. air-to-ground missiles have also received considerable attention. For a long time since the eruption of the Gulf War, the role of the Air Force has at times been underestimated. Some subjective opinions have even likened it to an icon of waste, when it failed to cause significant damage to insurgent groups that practically had no production facilities and supply sources, and relied almost entirely on the support of backers behind them. However, when the conflict in Ukraine took place, Russian strike groups demonstrated devastating effectiveness by wiping out a significant part of the logistical system and infrastructure to the point of almost completely paralyzing the Kiev government in a short period. Ukraine was forced to respond with precision missile strikes, despite the fact that these pinpoint attacks did not cause significant damage to Russia, while the remaining valuable fighter jets were at risk of being destroyed. Countries in conflict with Russia, therefore, developed a psychological inclination to accumulate additional accurate ground-to-ground weapons from the United States. In March 2023, according to the report of the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, Poland would receive 800 AG-11 Hellfire missiles and related equipment in a contract worth up to $150 million with the Pentagon. This type of missile gained prominence due to its combat capabilities demonstrated in NATO's fight against the Taliban, even though its speed only reaches Mach 1.3. It has also been present in a series of conflicts in Syria, Somalia, and Yemen. The AG-11 Hellfire uses a multi-purpose warhead to attack reactive armor of tanks, capable of detonating upon contact to disperse the warhead. Storing a large number of Hellfire missiles as a precaution for the worst-case scenario is undoubtedly a safe choice, especially for countries that have a tradition of using U.S. weapons or intend to switch to Western weapon systems. But speaking of sought-after weapons, after the conflict in Ukraine would be incomplete if we overlook the name HIMARS. Although not as powerful as Russia's BM-30 Smerch rocket artillery, HIMARS has the advantage of mobility, allowing Ukraine to apply hit-and-run tactics, causing significant damage to the Russian forces. HIMARS has a ready-to-load compartment for 6 227mm guided rockets, or a large compartment for loading ATACMS tactical missiles. Neighbors in conflict with Russia quickly realized that this is a very potential weapon that can cause significant damage to the enemy in the worst-case scenario. The most notable HIMARS procurement deal must be mentioned is the $10 billion deal between Poland and the U.S. on February 7, 2023. However, saying so doesn't mean that the conflict in Ukraine only created a single opportunity for U.S. defense contractors. South Korea, a small country, is also a player in the global arms market, showing ambitions to expand its market share due to the impact from the Ukraine battlefield. According to the Korea Economic Institute of Defense and Trade in 2022, South Korea's defense exports increased by 140% compared to the same period last year, bringing in revenue of $17.3 billion for the Asian country. But of course, throughout 2022, they cleverly avoided putting Ukraine on the customer list to avoid provoking Russia. The main export items include fighter aircraft, self-propelled artillery, tanks, and missiles, with the most significant contract being a $12.4 billion deal with Poland. In early 2023, South Korea also signed valuable contracts, such as a $920 million deal to export 18 F-50 light fighters to Malaysia. F-50 was also ordered by Poland from South Korea for training purposes. In addition, the K-9 Thunder self-propelled artillery, K-2 tanks, and the technology to produce them have also been sought after in Eastern Europe. The modern T-155 howitzer brought by Turkey has shown its prowess in the IT League, facing the front lines against the Syrian army, essentially identifying this country's nickname for the K-9 artillery from South Korea. Meanwhile, Turkey itself is a relatively advanced country in the defense industry. For South Korea, the conflict was also an opportunity to expand marketing campaigns for new defense products, such as the K-39 Chunmoo rocket artillery with a caliber of 131 millimeters, sharing many similarities with HIMARS. It can use various K-33 131 millimeters unguided shells with a range of 36 kilometers, up to 239 millimeters guided missiles that can hit targets at a distance of 80 kilometers. Even China seized the opportunity to invade the traditional weapons market of the Russians. In the past year, Beijing has exported weapons and military equipment to 17 countries in Africa, while Russia's partner countries in the region are only 14. China's defense products sent to Africa include aircraft, drones, artillery, armored vehicles, missiles, and warships. To differentiate itself from competing rivals, China focuses on exporting individual weapon market segments such as positioning devices, radars, and UAVs that it produces itself. Expert John Patton at REN commented that China, like Russia, advertises its assets as substitutes for some Western products in the same segment, but at lower costs. In front of contracts worth hundreds of millions to billions of dollars, perhaps not a few Koreans and Chinese felt fortunate because, in the government's previous investment priority portfolio, there was the defense industry and related industries, not just real estate, stocks, insurance. Beyond the US, South Korea, and China, some other countries like Israel and Turkey also benefited from the Ukraine conflict through arms sales. Although it may sound unbelievable, according to some Western sources, even countries like Iran and North Korea are believed to have earned revenue from cooperating in the production and supply of weapons to Russia. It's not just good news for weapon-producing countries. The Ukraine conflict also allows less involved countries to accumulate more assets from Russia and the West's sanctions. Countries like Norway, Algeria, the Way, Saudi Arabia, and Indonesia enjoy exporting crude oil, natural gas, metals, while China and India profit from the cheap imports from Russia or reselling banned items. Another way to profit is based on the technological potential of the world's second most powerful military power. That is providing modern technology to Russia, a very wise move from China, especially as the West is increasingly seeing this country as a comprehensive international rival. As you know, China, with its position as the world's modern factory and a vital link in the global trade chain, has the ability to buy large quantities of components, equipment, machinery from anywhere on this planet. Moreover, in recent times, China has emerged as an equal rival to the United States in several technological fields, especially in the production techniques of intricate electronic components. This is also an area where Russia still has many limitations. While these small and delicate components are an indispensable part for weapons ranging from light to heavy to operate precisely. Unable to access supplies from Europe, the United States, South Korea, and Japan, Russia had to increase imports of alternative products from China. Since the beginning of 2023, U.S. intelligence has repeatedly accused China of assisting Russia in evading Western sanctions and providing military technology to Moscow for use in Ukraine. Reports indicate that state-owned Chinese defense companies transported positioning equipment, disruptive technology, and aircraft parts to government-owned defense companies in Russia. U.S. manufactured equipment was also acquired by some Chinese companies for export to Russia, serving the military purposes of the latter. China and Russia also intensified military cooperation, conducting joint training activities, allowing them to increase their deterrent power against regional powers and exert pressure on disputes with neighboring countries. Initially benefiting the US, China, and some indirectly involved countries, key EU and Ukrainian countries found themselves in a double crisis. Unexpectedly, on October 7, 2023, in the midst of the Middle East War, Israel won, an ally of the United States, was unexpectedly attacked by Hamas forces. The subsequent new conflict in the Middle East caused one of the most significant geopolitical risks to the oil market since the outbreak of the conflict in Ukraine. At this point, the world witnessed Russia and its ally Iran having the opportunity to enhance their strategic influence comprehensively. Firstly, Russia cooperated with Lebanon to prevent the conflict from spreading. President Vladimir Putin assessed the outbreak of violence between Israel and Palestine as a vivid example of the failure of U.S. policy in the Middle East. He believed that the U.S. did not consider the needs of the Palestinian people. Many viewed Russia's actions as an attempt to attract support from Muslim countries and deepen rifts in relations between Western powers. More importantly, the conflict in Israel forced the West to divert its attention from the Ukraine conflict. Meanwhile, many allied countries appeared exhausted by Kiev's counteroffensive against Russia's vital positions in the east, not only being halted, but also facing the risk of a futile depletion of remaining resources. U.S. President Joe Biden pledged that the U.S. had the capability to support the security needs of both Israel and Ukraine, while urging Congress to approve an emergency funding of $105 billion to cover these needs. However, Israel might ultimately need types of weapons that Ukraine currently lacks, including armed drones and artillery shells. The U.S. and the West found themselves drawn into a race of resource depletion on both fronts, eagerly anticipated by Russia, to intensify the offensive towards Kiev. Not far away, in the past 2 weeks, Ukraine witnessed a massive air campaign by Russia, targeting most critical areas in the south. Russian forces used various weapons, including ground-to-ground missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, and precision-guided munitions, to target areas along the front line and beyond on Ukrainian territory. As for Iran, being a country with hostile tendencies towards Israel, they also sought to take advantage of the opportunity, but in more detail than Russia, mainly focusing on enhancing their position in the region and weakening Israel. Former Israeli National Security Advisor Dayan also stated that Iran exploited the Israel-Hamas conflict to divert the world's attention from nuclear projects, and this effort has been successful. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which provides training and weapons to various anti-US factions in the region, including the Houthi group in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas, and the Islamic Jihad group in Gaza. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei declared the conflict an irreversible failure for Israel, emphasizing that Israel would not easily recover from this strike. These forces, continuously targeted and pursued by the Israeli military in a retaliatory campaign, are likely to align more closely with Iran in a common goal, driving the Jewish people out of the region. According to many analysts, events in Gaza have realized some of Iran's objectives, elevating its status as the most influential power in the region, disrupting normal relations between the US, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, and weakening the potential of the Jewish state. Though somewhat cynical, throughout human history, conflicts in any country have always provided opportunities for external forces. In the eyes of narrow nationalism and advocates of opportunistic philosophy, what one can gain from those not of the same blood, culture, or language is just a few beautiful words from professional pens. What they need to care about is how to reassure those taxpayers who support the government machinery, drawing lessons from the darkest and most painful places to ensure that their nation never experiences such suffering in the midst of an increasingly chaotic and conflicted world. However, that is somewhat a pessimistic perspective from 5 seconds unfiltered based on the information we've compiled. What is your viewpoint? Leave it in the comments for everyone to know. And now, goodbye, and see you in the next video.